way to get started with BBDash is to visit the GitHub repository and download the installer from one of these links. And once this is done downloading, we are just going to click on the file, drag the icon to our applications folder. And if we double click on the application now, it's going to give us an error saying that it can't be checked by Apple for malicious software. We can bypass by doing right click and then open. And that will start the application. So it starts as a small window. We can double click to make it bigger. We can also click on this button to show the sidebar here. And the first thing we're going to have to do is to create our database to store all of our data. So I'm going to go to the settings tab, then click create database, and then we name our database. And to see the database, we can click the refresh button. Sometimes the first time that you use a database, it will have some issues. So the very first time I use a database after creating it, I restart the application. And then the next thing we should do is check that the database is still selected. There's a green check mark so we know it's active. And then we can add our transfusion data. So I've included two files on the GitHub repository. And you should start with the location file and drop it into the transfusion section here, and then the utilization file. And if that works, we should be able to go to the tables part of the application. And we have an example with all of these fake transfusions that I have created in the example files. We can also explore the database so we can see that different locations have been added automatically, different product abbreviations. The providers, this is an optional step. We can add specialty data for the providers. So if we want to add a specialty for some of our providers, we can do the first name, tab, middle name. In this case, I'm just going to leave it empty. And then another tab, and then we can enter their specialty information. So we submit that, and we should see that it updates in the database here. Next, we can go to graphs to visualize some of our data. So the products graphs we can do just by pressing graph, and this will create a graph for all of the products. In the example data, there's no cryoprecipitate. There's a single plasma transfusion. There's a few platelet transfusions and a few red cell transfusions. So we can see those here. We can also do a provider comparison by going to the provider tab and then selecting products that we want to look at. So there's a few platelet transfusions in the data, and again, a few red cell transfusions. And that's how you get started with BBDash.